This episode is brought to you by Sable International, building futures beyond borders.
Welcome to the Relocated South African, the podcast that explores the journeys of South Africans building lives and careers around the world. I'm your host, Jan Hugo, speaking to you from Lagos in Portugal. Today I'm joined by Dale Anderson, an entrepreneur and advisor who has experienced both sides of the immigration journey, and may I say, a fellow member of the Lekker Network. Welcome, Dale.
Thanks, Jan. I appreciate it, and great to connect. It's really good to be part of the Lekker Network. It's really opened a lot of doors to some interesting people because we're all scattered all over the show, us South Africans. So yeah, it's been a great community and a great way to connect with like-minded entrepreneurs.
Excellent. So good to hear that. So Dale, where did you grow up, study, and start your career?
So I grew up in Johannesburg. Actually grew up in a town called Alberton, so you know quite well.
Mm-hmm.
In Johannesburg. So grew up there, but then also when I was around 10, 11, my parents went through a divorce and moved to a farm in Walkerville. So pretty much grew up on a farm. We had like a forest and a lot of outdoor space. But when I reached the age of sort of 18, 19, prospects weren't that great. Parents had hit some financial trouble. So I had British ancestry through my father's side. I had fortunately my British passport. So I was actually in a band at the time. So I was studying sound engineering. You know, when you're young, you've got these dreams and ambitions. So I was playing in some bands. We decided to relocate actually with the band to the UK back then in the early 2000s. So I spent a good 16, 17 years across the pond in London. Got there with sort of just graduated from college. That's business studies, no university degree or anything. And then just, landed in London with a suitcase, probably 50 quid, 100 quid in my pocket in about 2002 or so. And started my journey from there, working any jobs, working factories, working call centers. And then I found my passion when I was around 24, 25, which was property and real estate investments. Yeah, there's a broader story there. On the way up, I had to do the hard graft when I got to the UK. It wasn't easy. You have to learn about their rules and regulations and their way of life. And but there was thankfully a very already good, nice community of South Africans in the southwest of London, specifically Wimbledon side, and that's where I spent a lot of my younger days partying down at the bars and stuff there.
It's absolutely fascinating. I spoke to another lady who's also in the Lekker Network. I spoke to a guy in she's also back in Cape Town, and a guy in a South African guy who's actually living in Ukraine. And all of you did the same thing. I think it was around that time in the early 2000s when you got that sort of 2-year visa for the South Africans to go and live and work in the UK. So there must have been quite a big community then of people like that, as you were saying.
Yeah, there was. So we still, even though we had a short summer, we'd all get together on the weekends and have our braais. And I played in some cool bands as well. So I'd be doing the real estate stuff, but then doing gigs around London in the evening. And it was a lot of fun, but then I had children and I had the urge to come home. A lot of people don't make it to like sort of 16, 17, almost 20 years in the UK because it can also be tough. Expensive living, you've got to live in house shares to start. We don't have the benefit of having a maid that can come and clean the house every few days. It's like everything, there's pros and cons, but certainly from a career perspective, I met a lot of people from all around the globe, and it enabled me to travel and get into the career and the business that I run today.
Okay, we'll get to that. What instrument did you play in the band?
Bass guitar.
Oh, wow.
By default, I think everyone preferred to be the guitarist or drummer. It was a band called Starseed, so we used to play lots of gigs at the Clapham Grand, and I played in another sort of punk rock band as well, Delayed, and it was more like my younger days obviously now I'm 41 years old. So, but it was yeah, I grew up in that era. It was the skateboarders and, that kind of thing. One would say I'm more one of those people that is intelligence and looks at data and stuff. But on the other side, I love music and creativity. And, that's my sort of part-time thing, let's say, around the actual career, which is property investment.
Yeah. And do you still play in the band or in South Africa?
Guitars all over on my walls now, like art. I've got about 8-9 guitars up on the wall here in the office for memories. But I've got twin daughters. They were born, they're 8 years old now. And I kind of decided I wasn't going to be spending too much time like work, plus then in the evenings playing the music. So yeah, kind of gave it a break. But I still make music. But yeah, it's just part-time for now. Maybe there might be some sort of a comeback at some point if I can find the time. But yeah, running a couple of businesses and having twin daughters keeps you quite busy.
No, I can
One needs to
totally expect
prioritize.
that. And when you think back to those early days when you went to the UK, I mean, was it just an adventure? Did you always think you're going to come back to South Africa?
I knew I was going to go there to establish myself and look for opportunities. At the time, I think generally a lot of us had a frustration around South Africa and the lack of opportunities, especially someone like me grew up on the farms that side. And, I was working at they don't exist anymore. I Mr. Video. Remember the old Mr. Video and Blockbuster? The younger generation might remember those days. But literally that's what I was doing, earning like 2,000 Rand a month. Back then that was all right to pay for whatever I needed to do and go visit my girlfriends. Or say girlfriend, my wife's just laughing downstairs. She's my one girlfriend is now my wife for 20, how many years? 26 years around there. So I better not get that wrong. But I think the crux of it is you got to start somewhere. Like you can't go there and just expect to be like, oh, all of a sudden I'm going to move to the UK and the grass is green on the other side. I really had to work from the bottom up. The benefit there is you can do manual jobs, like I know guys that have even been what we call as garbage collectors or whatever, but there's minimum wage. So even if you're bartending or something, you're earning a minimum British wage, which in rands at the time was still quite substantial. So, but actually living in the UK, you really got to work really hard to get to that point where you're actually living a more comfortable life and actually able to invest in things like property and that, which I was quite fortunate to get to that small percentage, but it took time.
It's funny, this one guy, the guy who was in Ukraine, he actually went checked into a hospital and was a sort of call it a lab rat. They tested medications on it.
I've got a friend who did that. I've got a friend who literally went and let them do experiments and to try new medicines and stuff. And I'm like, are you sure that's a good idea? But South Africans are like, we quite strong-willed, and we literally like get there and just, some would last. It's funny because some people would last, like people may be living a lot more comfortable in South Africa and their parents have a nice house. They'll be there for 6 months and leave. I saw it's like a revolving door. But then I had a group of friends, we really stuck it out and, we escalated our careers and ended up in director positions and things. But you have to go through that tough part, right?
If you need South African documents sorted from wherever you are in the world, Apostille handles the whole process for you. Click on the link in the description below. Yeah, that was kind of my next question. I mean, in those early days, firstly, you say your wife, you've been together for a long time. Did she go to the UK with you, or did
she went to the UK with me? Yeah, we moved there when I was about 20. I'm 40. Yeah, actually, I'll say we've been together that long, probably around there. But yeah, we moved there together. She was a really great support for me at the time because I think a lot of people go, maybe it's, lonely, but we met very young, and we worked together. And sometimes I was having a bit of a hard time with work and stuff, and then she got a job working at Kia car company, so that really helped. And then I remember one day I was working for Informer Group, which is just literally data entry. Never realized how important data is until today, but it was literally a data entry job, and she obviously had a job as well. So it kind of helped because we had dual income coming in, which helps you get by. And then, so she's always been there since we were living in like a small house in this really like not great studio where you had to put money in the box to make the shower work, you know what I mean? And it was like one of these really old, they call them house of multiple occupancy, but they just ram in a lot of young people or students. And I just remember Christmas, we had this tiny little Christmas tree. I just lost my job as this event management, smaller company. They were trying to run it from the garage, this couple. And I was just sitting there and praying and thinking, I need to find something to make a change. The next day I walked down Wimbledon High Street. I saw some real estate guys in ties, and there they wear like funny pink socks and pink ties. I don't get it. So I'm like, hang on, I think I can do this. So I just walked into the manager's office and I said, have you got any work? And he said, had you worked in property before? I said, no. I said, I've done some call center jobs. I worked for a company. Actually, I did work for a company for a period selling inspection visits to Spain, because of course the British problem is the weather. They love Spain. So I spent a few months practicing, let's call it, on the phones. So I walked into the state agency, just said, I'm looking for a job. I'm good at sales. The guy hired me the next day. But real estate's real tough because you really got to you're working till 8 in the evening. You're getting parking tickets because now you do the viewings, right? And in England, you've got to pay everywhere you park. So I take clients to view a house, and these are like £500,000 houses, like ridiculous prices, Wimbledon. But I got very good at that. But estate agencies was very quite cutthroat, and it just wasn't really for me. So then, then I decided to kind of pivot and go into the offshore markets and actually helping South Africans who wanted to move money offshore. But those first 8, 9, 10 years really forge you, I guess, and you learn a lot of lessons. But what's great is the British, I think they do see us as hardworking. And, each role or career I've been in, I've managed to kind of work my way up quite quickly to team leader or, management positions. So, they joke around with the British and the rugby and the football and this and that, and we like to wind each other up. But generally, I think British, South Africans and Australians, we had quite a good community there. Made some very good friends.
Absolutely. I think that's amazing. And, you talk about those stories of the early living and so on, but those things are character building. So I think, they stay with you and they're great stories. Was there ever a time when you and your wife wanted to turn back and say, this is not working for us, especially in the early days? Or did you decide we're going to stick this through?
So there were times that got really tough where, even of course we got married, but, wives especially emotionally, they miss their families. And the time apart is the challenging time is really being away from your family that long. And yeah, you get to see them every couple of years when we can start affording a holiday, and it's great coming over. But then you come back and you also see the problems aside, and you're like, it's kind of a wake up call, and how can we help? So yeah, there was an interesting time where we were sort of at a crossroads, and my wife had literally actually packed and left, and I was due to follow her. And then things started going really well at work. My team started growing. I was running a property investment floor. Got promoted to project manager, and I had to phone in and say, listen, I don't think I can head back. I looked for opportunities in South Africa, but I couldn't match the opportunity that I currently had. So eventually my mom stepped in and had a sensible conversation with us both and said, listen, you need to listen to your husband and trust him. So she came back another few years, and it really then took off. We were able to buy some property, get on the property ladder. That went up in value. We were able to equity release and then buy a nicer house. And at that point, I think, of course, the wife became more comfortable, and would visit the parents or fly them over when we need to. But just before COVID, we sort of then I'd been sitting on the train one day and I'm like, I'm just doing the same thing every day, crammed on the train, prices of everything's going up. And, work was almost going too well to the point where I was like, they were keeping me, my children, my twin daughters were born. We struggled to have kids for a long time. So when they were born, I had this sort of moment of, I'm barely ever at home. I'm constantly working. And I resigned from my 6-figure job, which is a very bold decision because I was earning good money, but just happens that company then ran into trouble a few months later. But I worked for them for like 12, 13 years. So it was a tough decision. But as we landed, my parents sold the farm in Johannesburg. They moved to Western Cape. So I did a bit of research and I just said, I prayed about it. I'm Christian and God has kind of said, it's time to go back home. And I moved back, set up remote. Everyone's like, what's Zoom? What's this? I'm setting up my new company, hiring all the staff from my computer. And they're like, where are you? Can we meet for a coffee? I'm like, no, I'm in Langebaan in the Western Cape. So everyone's still, to this day, people still think I'm in the UK. Of course, I visit there. My company's registered there. But can we meet for a coffee? We can over Zoom if you're in Cape Town. But we moved back and then there was the lockdown and things changed and it kind of almost worked it was tough, but it worked to my advantage because I'd set up, I'd already been working remotely then for a couple of months. And then the whole world shut down, everything kind of changed.
So you moved back to South Africa before COVID?
Literally like 2-3 months before the COVID lockdown.
Okay.
To the Western Cape where I'd never been in my life before. I'd been to Durban, been everywhere. And I just did some research. My mom told me about this place in the Western Cape. And then we sold our house and packed up and we moved back. And then I said to my wife, I'm going to just set up the same thing I'm doing, which is offshore property investments, but I'm going to set up from Cape Town or South Africa. That was the plan. So that's what we did.
Oh, that's a fascinating journey. And it sounds like you backed up, but as you say, you made that decision in faith. So, good for you.
Yeah.
Well done. And we'll get to the business side shortly. But when you think about what you've set up and the business that you've set up, do you think that would have been possible in South Africa, or did you need to go to the UK to get to where you are today?
Prior to COVID, I needed a team there. And that team was quite expansive and operations became very expensive. Then COVID hit the market and everything slowed down. So we had to slowly reduce those high operating expenses in the UK. And what I quickly realized, I wish I realized this sooner, is a lot of the operational stuff can actually be outsourced. We have a good time zone in Cape Town. I realized a lot of my staff were working remote from home after COVID anyway. They've got kids, they've got families and babies and stuff like that. So, but then I had business partners who very fundamentally believed that you must be in the office. So they had the office there, which is fine. But I'd say it's probably one of the hardest decisions I've made because it's not been easy building from the side and not being able to go and just meet someone for a coffee in London. But it's also been one of the best decisions because I'm now able to build my operation and actually employ locally. So, I'm really looking forward to this new chapter with the new company because I don't have a big operation in London anymore, an expense of a London office. I can run it from South Africa and we have some great talent, which I can onboard here as well, give them the opportunity. But yeah, it's a bit of, I've got my guys I trust that are on the ground in the UK if I need. So the developers are all there, my contacts, my partners have built over the years. And then this just opens other doors. I've made a great network here. I'm closely partnered with Sable International and another group of networks and companies during my last 5 years. Yeah. So it's been good to get a foothold on the ground here because when I got here, it was like almost like when I landed in London 20 years ago, I didn't know the landscape of Cape Town or the Western Cape. Joburg, I know off the back of my head, but it was all very new. But it's the best decision I've made, and my wife's happy, the family's happy, children are enjoying it this side as well. And, get the outdoors. It's a different culture. I love the UK. I love the British. I love the traditional countryside and the British pubs, but then things were also going a bit the other way there. So, it was getting a bit, when you see the youngsters and the disrespect to the elders, for example, it's not like, there's still a bit of discipline, So it's got, both places have their pros and cons. And so although South Africa has its challenges, we also have a lot of, we're blessed with a beautiful country, So despite the challenges, I'd say it was definitely one of the best decisions I made.
And if you think about South Africans moving to the UK, I mean, we've spoken about Sable. They obviously help a lot of people, and it seems like it's happening in both directions these days. But sometimes, what are the biggest misconceptions about living in the UK that you come across when you talk to South Africans?
The biggest misconception goes back to, and everyone's probably heard this, that the grass is greener. It is greener. But of course, one of the things is it's all kind of relative. So what's nice about the UK is, okay, there's good government support, right? You've got the NHS that everybody complains about, but my dad lives in Scotland. He had a heart attack and he got seen to. Now, if that was in South Africa, it would have cost us a lot of money and it would have been a problem. So the UK has a great people, a great support system. I think one of the bigger misconceptions is that you can just go there and kind of make it overnight. You're going to have to really start at junior level, and you're going to have to work your way up and be humble about that. You can't go over there with us South Africans like to think, come on, let's go. But you've actually, the right thing to do is, it's actually their country, it's Britain. So you've got to assimilate. And I think a lot of the problem is people go over there and they don't kind of assimilate. And, you just got to sort of make friends, connect with the right people, get in the right rooms. But there's significant opportunities and a lot of people in London you meet that you would not otherwise get to meet. It's a very global city. So I think the misconception is it's expensive. I think we know that now. There's tax and there's systems and rules that you need to follow. So it's not an easy path. It's challenging, but can be very rewarding if you stick it out. It's not going to be a quick fix.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, I think it's so important. You've already answered a lot of the questions, but one of the things, I mean, with immigration, there's a thing called red tape that follows you and haunts you when you move across borders. Did you find now coming back to South Africa that having to reestablish yourself from a tax and just a general red tape perspective, getting medical aid and stuff sorted, was that a difficult process?
So yeah, I mean, I'm very lucky to have a wife who keeps me organized with insurance, banking, with finance side. So it was quite difficult because, of course, then you've got to go wait in the queues to get, now your South African passport, IDs, all that updated. You then have to make sure that you are covered from a tax perspective. So now, yes, you can keep your businesses offshore. That's great in the UK or Dubai, wherever it is. But at some point, you're going to need to factor in the fact that, if you're bringing income into the country, you need to consider, as much as you may not want to, you need to consider your tax position and make sure that you're set up correctly. Another thing is looking into schools for children. You need to research areas and locations if you're planning on moving back. And then in terms of things like, luckily your British license, you can still use when you move back, use your British passport and things like that. But of course, then there is the longer term situation. Like my brother's moved back, for example, recently. Q and Anderson is also part of the Lekker Network. sold the technology business, done really well, and moved back. But things to consider is his wife is British and his children have British passports. So now he's having to go through that whole bureaucracy of applying online and getting that sorted. So I think planning ahead and, using companies like Sable can probably help with that. Or pop people in the Lekker network with the whole relocation. It's a big move. Big challenge is you've set up your life in a different country and you've got a lot of stuff. So then you've got to now consolidate, think about shipping costs, getting stuff back, thinking about setting up a bank account. So now you need, you've got to think about, okay, do I have a registered address? So my advice is when you get here, rent, check out the areas, look at the schools, and then, if you can afford, buy a house. Always believe owning real estate, especially in the Western Cape right now, is better than renting if you're able to. But a lot of stuff that you have to relearn and understand that things in South Africa don't go as quick as they do in the UK. So you might have to wait. But, do get passport sorted, get anything else you need to make sure that your visa or whatever doesn't expire, depending on what passport you're on. If you're South African, it's fine. But it's assimilating back into the South African culture that you've been away for so long, and just getting used to it again, especially Western Cape, which is probably slightly different culture to Gauteng. But it was fairly straightforward. I wouldn't say it was, the first 6 months, 3 to 6 months is probably the hardest, and then things start to settle.
And Dale, one thing that comes out in every conversation that we have on the podcast is the security aspect. It's amazing for people who are leaving that is a big issue. How did that factor into your process of coming back?
So for me, coming back to the country, my number one concern was safety for my children. I've got 2 beautiful twin daughters that are 8 years old, and I wouldn't want to put them anywhere where there's a risk. Hence, I decided not to move back to Joburg. In saying that, Joburg has some lovely areas. It's like everywhere in South Africa, you've got Stain City, and then you've got Kilbra and Cape Town, you've got the nice towns around like Durbanville and Blouberg where people live, and it's a lot safer. But if you go across the pond, then there's people living in poverty, and that's the real number one challenge of South Africa. And, a lot of entrepreneurs I speak to moving back, that's also partly the reason we did move back, was to try and help, the country, I think when you get a bit older, you're like, okay, it's a lovely country, and if you choose a good, safe family for your area, do your research. Partly the reason I don't live in the city is because of, not fear, but I've got daughters, and I wouldn't want them to, I've been a subject of crime and robbery in the past. I wouldn't want them to have to experience that. So it's a difficult choice, but I would say the headline in the media doesn't help things. They always focus on the really bad, negative stuff. There's a lot of good stuff happening in this country. There's a lot of people moving back. I've now consulted probably 4 or 5 friends who've also been in London, in Scotland, good friends of mine that were in the bands, and best childhood friend that was in Ireland. And they started phoning me 3 years ago, and asking me all these questions. How is it? Is it safe? How's the schools? I'm like, yeah, it's great. Near the Lagini Beach, the crime rate in Langebaan is statistically one of the lowest in the country. Obviously, I did my research, right? So before I moved here, I'm a data guy. I checked all the data, the crime stats. So there's little pockets of areas that are safe, but of course, it just depends where you decide to move. Some of us are fortunate enough, if we've done well overseas, we can move back, and a lot of the companies are still hiring us in the UK and the USA. So, those kind of people have quite a good setup because they're earning in foreign currency or dollars. And that's why I often recommend diversification offshore, because then you can start to earn income in pounds, but live in South Africa, and then you're living, compared to prices in the UK, it's expensive, still getting expensive, but it's like 20, 30, 40% cheaper. So if you can earn pounds and dollars and live here, you can live a nice life, and you just got to make sure you're in the right area and you've done your research.
Absolutely. I think, that's the one thing that I really like about the Lekker Network is I had Nick on and I did an interview with Nick, and it's just the positivity of that network, which I think is absolutely critical for South Africa. As people, so easy to be
Yes,
negative, and as you say, focus on the negative side. So that's great
positive.
about the network.
Mm.
Dale, let's just get to the business. Just tell the listeners exactly what do you do today.
Yeah.
In a few short sentences, if you can.
Okay. So yeah. So basically, my company that I started with, Q and Anderson, he sold his technology and business and moved back. I've been at a director level sales project manager in off-plan and offshore property investments. So investors looking for plan B to diversify. I deal with clients from South Africa, Turkey, Middle East, and they'll look for investments in places like Manchester City, where there's a lot of education, university, and regeneration happening. So they see it as a sort of a safety haven, commutable towns around London as well. So my job is to make sure I partner with investors with the right developers or property agents, and then we source some property investments. Now, my new company, RGA Global, which I've just launched, is going to take a very much disciplined approach focused on good quality branded residences. We do a fully comprehensive due diligence process. So I'm very trusted because a lot of the people looking to get some money offshore, they're speaking to these sales floors and these big trading floors. These young guys out of university might not really have the experience. I've actually done it. I've moved there. I've built a property portfolio. I've built teams that raised over 1.5, almost 2 billion pounds in real estate transactions. So there's a number of awards that went with that. I won some entrepreneurial awards, small business awards, best real estate agent of the year, 40 under 40. I'm 41 now. I won it at 40, so I'm still eligible. So I've built a good track record there of moving money offshore, but not only the UK now, because the UK also has its problems. Some people want to now. We're in the era of digital nomads. So I've get some people who own tech companies, or they work in oil or gas, or doctors or surgeons, and they want a property in Mauritius, or they want a property in Bali or even Thailand because it's cheaper than Dubai. Of course, Dubai, I was just about to launch, and something was always holding me back. And of course, now we're on the press.
Yeah.
With everything going on, the Dubai market's going to kind of like it was very hyped. But it's highly driven by the expat community. So I do the data research on these offshore markets, and then I help source property for investors and take a very disciplined approach to capital allocation. Of course, then I have the Fractional Sales Director role with Sable, where I consult for them as two, and that helps me get access to all their additional services such as immigration and tax structures, setting up offshore companies, and so forth.
Okay, I was gonna say about, obviously in Portugal we had the golden visa. I think there's still golden visa schemes in other countries like Greece and so on. That's not necessarily part of what you do. It's more an investment type of thing.
Yeah, we look for something that you can get a good rental yield on, and then I look at the data in terms of the market growth, capital growth. So I'm direct to supplier. I don't charge a fee like a traditional agent. I'll get paid by the developers. But the main thing is to match up depending on your retirement planning and, build a portfolio for you. So we could start with one property. You could end up with 4 or 5. South Africans don't know, for example, in the UK, you can get a mortgage for like 4% interest, whereas you're paying 9%. And what that means, if you're getting like £1,100-1,200 a month, because rent's really high there, that's just Manchester. London's like £2,000 a month. So your mortgage, I had an apartment, 2-bed, in an area called Starseed, so the commuter belt around London. Paid £200,000 for it about 10 years ago. When I moved back, I sold it for 320,000. My rent was £1,100 a month, and my mortgage was £600 a month. So I had every month £500 in my account, and my tenant is paying my debt, and the value of the property is going up. Now that's an ideal situation. you know, nobody can look in a crystal ball, but it's my job to do that due diligence for the investors. I mean, they don't have the time. 24/7, I'm studying the market, geopolitics, and, you know, what offshore markets are the most reliable for investors. But there's the lifestyle aspect as well. We've got branded residents with pools and all the, you know, concierge and gyms and stuff. So it just depends what the customer wants.
And are you getting a sense that there's offshore interest in South Africa? I would just imagine with Dubai and what's happened there. Remember 2008 when the whole place crashed. But
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a while. The money that was
Yeah.
flowing in there is probably going to look for other homes. Do you find that places like northern KwaZulu-Natal, for instance, where they built that new Ernie
Yeah.
Els golf course, that there's offshore interest in South Africa as well?
I'm finding the interest in South Africa is mostly wealthy Africans and South Africans buying here. But then you're also now starting to see some, so say like even here where I live, I meet some people from Netherlands, Germany, and what they like is because of the weather here during their winter, you know, my neighbor's from Switzerland. So I was like, what you doing in Langebaan? He says, well, you know, he's got a wife from South Africa, kids here. And so when it's cold there, then obviously he comes to live here. And vice versa. For retirement, that works perfectly for him. But Cape Town's booming. I mean, there's been a huge amount of off-plan developments. I've seen a lot of movement this side in the market. And then even in Carton, you've got like that Stain City. And so there's a lot of semi-gration, local demand. The problem you have, if you look at the long-term stability of the country as an investment, there are still concerns, and that's purely down to the corruption of the ANC, high interest rates, and a volatile rand. So yes, it can all seem great now and people are moving back, but interest rates are high. So, you know, even if you buy a property, great, and you Airbnb it, you're getting so much money, you still got a bit of a shortfall every month. That's where the UK, I'm like, well, my rent's covering my bond, right? Good debt, bad debt, rich dad. We can go to all those books and stuff, and I'm not into all that American stuff. But the reality is, you've got to look at the numbers. And whilst I've personally invested in the Western Cape, property values have risen sharply. You know, I think it will probably settle. And you know, the fact is, yes, you can have property in South African investments show, and maybe they can be doing well, but you need to think about long-term legacy and a plan B, because let's face it, bringing up children in South Africa and just hoping for the best that they're going to get a good job and have a good life and career is being a little bit ignorant as a father. You know, you need to think, what if? So yes, South Africa is great and it's booming and it's got its own local economy and market. The real estate sector did crash and was volatile a few years back. But yeah, there's a lot of people moving back. I'd actually like to look at the actual data of that at some point. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I was going to ask you because I had Andy Rissick also on the show in December last year, and we were talking about. He's saying that from a Sable perspective, they're seeing a lot of flows back into South Africa, you know. But I think what probably also happens, as you say, with people who've done well overseas, can now afford more of a nomadic type of lifestyle where you spend 6 months, you know, live in one place and then
That's
the
correct.
other.
So I've still got to get on a plane and go to the UK and meet my partners, and I might need to fly out last year to Doha, Qatar, or Hong Kong. So we're more mobile, but since COVID, the perception has changed that we have to be in the UK. So a lot of people are like, Dale's onto something. And they all start phoning me, like, speak to Sable. Actually, know Andy Rissick quite well as well. So, you know, we've had a few meetings recently, had the same discussion. And it's interesting. I always think maybe I should get involved in the market and sell some properties, because I'm getting so many people phone me and like ask me, where should I buy a house? Should I buy in Langebaan, Neisner? What's the process? And I'm like, just helping as a friend. But, you know, that's where Sable comes in and they can be really helpful. I like to stick in my lane and be the offshore guy. You know, there's already enough estate agents in South Africa.
Yeah.
I'll stick to my niche, but you need to diversify. It's nice to have a
Now,
place
Andy,
here.
mm,
Yeah,
Andy's got a place up in Cascais, so he lives in Portugal
Portugal.
part of the year as well. So
He's
we
done the
know
same
all
thing. He's
about it.
realized, yeah, he can spend some time in Portugal and then come to Cape Town. And they got offices in London.
Yeah.
So RGA Global is the new company we'll be launching in the next few days. And so I was purely focusing before UK, but we will now have Thailand, Mauritius, Bali. We were going to launch Dubai. I probably still will because there's going to be some big discounts and I've got investors from Middle East still buying there, but cautiously. And, it's a wait and see approach right now because things are, it's 88% of the population is expats in Dubai. So if a lot of expats immediately leave at once, like the recession, then you've got a problem. But the way I see it is there's a market correction, and hey, you can buy at a big discount, and things will get back to normal. You know what I mean?
And I mean, it's getting towards the end. If you think back to how your career and things have worked out, would you have done something differently if you had known what you know now?
The one thing I would have done when I was younger is focus more on myself, my health. Setting up my own businesses, not because I made some people millionaires and left the table with some good money, but not great money. And less partying, less drinking. I'm sober now, and a lot of that, it might seem fun when you're young, but later on it can affect you, and then you can realize, listen, I've got some catching up to do. So I'd say from a young age, knowledge is key. The book that changed my life was a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And, I didn't have much or anything when I moved to the UK, but it's that positive thinking. So you can really shape who you want to become. You need to think about the person you want to become and focus on those daily habits. One of my biggest regrets was being caught up in that London culture of the drinking and the, having to go with the developers after work to party. And so my number one advice is focus on your faith, your business, your health, and, becoming a man. There's a lot of this masculinity stuff going around and a lot of it's nonsense. I'd say more about, behaving. Like you can have fun when you're young and it's good, but don't get carried away because next thing you'll realize, you're drinking every day to take your stress away. And that's a bad situation for you and your business and your focus. So you can't be 100% focused and do the best you can at your job if you're not clear in mind and healthy. So that would be my advice. And some of my regrets, because I was a rock star, wasn't I? I was touring around in the evening, but eventually you're burning a candle at both ends, and then you have what's called burnout, and that's never a good thing. So balance is also key. Spend time outdoors. Don't sit on your phone scrolling all day. And if you are taking the right content, that's my thoughts. Yeah.
Excellent, very good advice. And just maybe a last question for a youngster now, a guy who's, say, just out of school or just finished university and he comes to you for advice. Would you recommend that they go and explore offshore?
100%. I don't think I would be where I am today. In fact, I don't know where I would be. But I think mindset's everything. Like if you've got the right mindset, you can even be successful in South Africa. It's about getting in the right room with the right people, networking, and just outwork the others. I mean, I used to go when I was young, I didn't have kids, right? So I'd go in the office on a Saturday while the guys were out watching their football and drinking, and I'd make 100 phone calls. And one day the guy answered the phone and, he's working for high up wealth families, De Beer, and I wouldn't have got that phone call that day if I didn't go in. So, yeah, you do need to put in the extra hard work when you're young. And don't be shy to get yourself out there and get on the phone. It depends what you do. If you maybe some people want to be coders and stuff and they're not good at sales. Find what you want to focus on. Be good at it. Definitely learn about AI because that's right now, you'll see on my LinkedIn, I post quite a lot about it. So not just property, because that is about to disrupt everything, just like Google disrupted everything and the internet disrupted everything. So it's not an overnight hype thing. If you can learn to use the tools and become the driver of those tools, you can work from anywhere in the world. However, on a final recommendation, I would highly recommend traveling or going to work offshore, whether that's London or Hong Kong. It will give you that experience and access to the right rooms to expand your knowledge, and probably much better than any university degree would have given me.
Absolutely. And you can always come back. I think that's the important thing.
Yeah. I'm not saying don't go to university depending on what you want to do, but for me, traveling was my biggest learner. Traveling to all those different countries, the cultures, and it was fun. So yeah, if you can, do it.
Quick reminder before we close today, if police clearances, apostille certificates, or any South African documents are still on your list, Apostille sorts it out for you. Visit the link in the description below and see how Apostille can help you on your journey. Dale, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your journey. It sounds like you've had an amazing journey, and I can only wish you well in South Africa and with your new business that's coming out. I think you're an example, and I think it's amazing to hear that somebody is happy to openly speak about his faith. For me, that's something that we miss these days. So well done.
Yeah, 100%. Yes, 100%.
Thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks a lot. God bless. Take care.
Thanks, and you too. And
Cheers.
To our listeners, if this episode resonated with you, please consider sharing it with someone who might enjoy the conversation. You can find more episodes of The Relocated South African on your favorite podcast platform or visit our website, therelocatedSouthAfrican.com. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.
This episode is brought to you by Sable International, building futures beyond borders.